The swashbuckling melee combat in Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced is actually deeper than you might think, with some cool tricks to make it even more deadly and more fun. Like how the rope dart has a bunch of extra ways to use it, or how kicking is actually really overpowered. I've also got a bunch of tips for naval combat to help you stop resyncing the Jackdaw, like using the swivel guns to wipe out basically half the enemies before you even board a ship, or how you can use the ram charge as an evasive maneuver. Plus, I tracked down some important early gear you don't want to miss, including how to easily get an excellent set of legendary blades before you're even halfway through the game, and a trinket that heals you every time you parry. And thanks to Ubisoft for actually reaching out to sponsor this video and sending over a key so I could get these tips to you guys as you're diving into the game. Let's start with one of my favorite melee combat tricks. The game will teach you early on that when you do a perfect parry and then immediately hit the prompt for a takedown, you can then chain at least one additional takedown if another enemy is close enough, but you only have a short window to do that. So if the second enemy is a little too far away, you can actually use the rope dart to quickly yoink them closer for the takedown. But there's actually two ways to use the rope dart, and you want to make sure you're using the right one for that trick. The first way is to hold aim, select the rope dart, and then fire it. But manually aiming is too slow for this takedown trick. So the better way is to actually not hold aim at all and just press R2 and circle together to instantly auto aim and auto fire the rope dart with a quick fire. On an Xbox style controller, that'd be RT and the B button. And on keyboard, it's just the number 4 key. The number of takedowns you can chain is determined by the stat on your swords, by the way, and I'll show you some swords in a minute that let you chain more than 2 as soon as possible. But the rope dart is really good for stealth too. Another one of my favorite tricks is to pull enemies closer who are just out of reach when I'm hiding. This won't fully alert them, but it still brings them in range to assassinate and hide the body. You can even pull them multiple times if you need to. You can also disable alarm bells from a distance with the rope dart. Just aim for the dangly part inside the bell and it'll break off, disabling the alarm. You can also disable alarm bells by shooting them with pistols, but that's not so stealthy. Rope darting glass bottles and other similar objects is a good stealth tactic though, because it can lure enemies either towards or away from you, setting them up for an assassination. And you can rope dart from above while perched on a branch or a similar vantage point if you're feeling really murderous, because it will actually hang the enemy. It's less stealthy than you might hope though, so be careful with that one. You need to make sure other enemies don't see it happen. Remember, rolling is very quiet as well, so you can easily roll up to enemies while sneaking around to close the distance on them quickly for an assassination without alerting them or their friends nearby. Rolling is a double tap of dodge when Edward is standing, but if he's already crouched, you just need to hit dodge once to roll. And don't forget you can throw smoke bombs out at enemies. You don't always have to just throw them at your feet. Later on in a main quest, you'll unlock the blowpipe, which is also definitely helpful for stealth, but the game doesn't really teach you at that point that there's actually more than one type of dart available right away. In addition to sleep darts, you've got berserk darts as well to make enemies hallucinate and attack each other. You just need to press left on the D-pad while aiming the blow dart to switch ammo types. On keyboard, you need to aim and then press the number 4. But you won't always be able to be so stealthy. And when you're in open combat, you're definitely going to want to use your pistols a lot because a single shot will completely break most enemies' guard, instantly opening them up for a takedown. Problem is, the pistols can be a bit slow to reload when you're in the thick of it. So I found you can actually speed things up by paying attention to the little reload dot icons above the health bar. Those dots fill in before Edward actually finishes the reload animation. That means the guns are actually reloaded sooner than you think, and you don't need to wait for the animation to finish. You can actually cancel out of the remaining part of the animation by doing pretty much anything like dodging, starting a melee attack, or even shooting again. So I found once I got in the habit of checking to see if those dots were filled in right after taking my shots, I was able to use the pistols faster and more often in combat. Eventually you kind of just get used to the timing and don't need to look anymore. Also, keep in mind your healing potions will always heal Edward all the way to full, so it's better to save those until you really need them. Instead, keep an eye out for food and drink, which is often around combat areas and will heal you up partially so you can save your health potions. That said, you'll come across plenty of health potions too, even from looting bodies, so don't be afraid to use one if you need it. But one of the most important combat tips I can give you sounds really boring, but it's to use the kick a lot. Not only does the kick knock down an enemy's guard bar by a good chunk, getting you closer to a takedown, but more importantly, it can interrupt enemy animations, even blue attacks, and even if you don't land the kick, it will often make enemies take a couple steps back to avoid it, clearing the area around you a bit. So I found it works really well to alternate doing a heavy attack or two with the swords and then kicking and then going back to a heavy attack. Heavy attacks, which you do by simply holding down the attack button, are really effective at knocking down the enemy's guard as well. even more than kicks. But if you try to spam them, you're going to get in trouble because you can't cancel out of the animation with a block or parry very quickly. So doing a heavy attack or two and then switching to a kick can keep enemies stunned because, again, the kick will interrupt a lot of enemy animations. It can also work well to alternate the kick with attempts at hitting parries. But that's just one reason the kick is so great. Another one is the simple joy of punting enemies off high places, which instantly kills them even from a relatively low height actually. And then you can also do wall takedowns with a kick. If you can get an enemy backed up near a wall, when you kick them, they'll knock back into the wall and then their guard gets instantly broken, teeing them up for a quick takedown. If you happen to be the one backed up against a wall, then run towards them and double tap dodge to roll over their back, and then you can immediately kick them into the wall. And wall takedowns are especially fun when you're boarding ships, because you've got the gunnel, that's the railing to all you landlubbers, all around the edge of the deck, which will act as a wall, and it's pretty close quarters. So you can often jump on board and just start kicking people to take them out. And if you kick them twice, you can sometimes shove them overboard, which is definitely peak pirate. Speaking of which, let's talk naval combat tactics. This is definitely my favorite part of the game because it's unique and there's a lot of cool tricks and strategies here. For example, I think the swivel guns are definitely underrated. These are mounted just to the sides of the helm, and there's 3 ways you should be using them. First, anytime a ship or fort develops weak points, that's what those rotating red markers are, you want to immediately hold R1 and aim the swivel gun at them. You don't need to hold aim or press any buttons to fire or anything. Just hold R1 and sweep the swivel gun reticle over the weak points and it'll auto fire for you. Hitting weak points is basically free extra damage, so try to take advantage of that anytime you can. And you can upgrade the swivel guns to increase the damage they do when hitting weak points by purchasing upgrades from a harbor master, which is definitely worth doing in the long run. You might have also noticed that explosive barrels enemy ships chuck out in the water have the same weak point indicator, which means you can use the swivel guns to quickly clear barrels and keep the waters safe for yourself. But my favorite swivel gun trick is using them to thin the herd just before boarding an enemy ship. After you release the wheel, you can just walk over to the swivel gun and fire straight onto the enemy ship's deck. It does swing a little wild, so it's hard to aim precisely, but you don't actually have to be that precise because the shots have a decent AoE. So just fire when you're in the general vicinity of an enemy, or better yet, near explosive barrels for bigger damage. Once you get the hang of this, you'll easily be able to knock down the enemy's crew morale by at least a third, if not more like a half, before you even board. And if you want to pick off even more enemies before boarding, you can hang back and take pistol shots from the safety of the Jackdaw. But a good captain is going to join his crew, and instead of clambering over, you can grab the rigging line right next to the swivel gun to swing over. And if you're lucky, drop down for an assassination, which is much more stylish and a lot more fun. When you're on board, if the objectives say to cut the enemy ship's flag and explode their powder kegs, you don't actually have to worry about that if you don't want to. You just need to reduce the morale bar all the way to take the ship. But let's back up for a second. Before you board, you need a good strategy for actually winning in ship-to-ship combat. So let me give you a whole battle opening sequence I've found really effective. One of the best ways to open a battle is to shoot the enemy ship's sails to slow them down, but you need to make sure you're using the right ammo for that. The chainshot, which is what you've got on your front cannons from the start of the game, is the one you need to use for shooting sails. So you want to start by facing the bow of your ship towards the enemy so you can use the front cannons, ideally from a good distance away, and then land a chainshot on their sails to slow them down. After that, basically every other type of weapon should be aimed at the hull of the enemy ship for maximum damage. If you're still far away after your chain shot to the sails and have time, you can take an additional forward shot aimed at the hull, but you'll want to switch to the alternate weapon on your front cannons for that. All the different weapons around your ship have at least one alternate, and to switch, you need to aim the weapon and then hit triangle on a PlayStation controller, Y on an Xbox controller, or E on PC. To get the double shot alternate for your front cannons, you can clear dry Fort Tortuga north of Havana in the first region. Other alternates and lots of weapons and ship upgrades will be purchasable from harbor masters. Real quick, I would also definitely recommend grabbing the mortar unlock from a harbor master as soon as possible. It's intended more for taking on forts, but you can deal big damage to enemy ships with it as well if you lead them a bit, since it takes a moment for the mortar fire to rain down. But back to our strategy. Now that you've got your forward shots off and the enemy ship is closing in, your next move is to actually just ram them. Ideally, they'll be turning away at least a little bit by this point because it's more effective to ram them from the side. But even ramming them from almost head on is still viable. You just want to try to avoid letting them ram you. So try to turn a bit as needed to get the angle on them. Ramming does a chunk of damage, and this should also set you up in a position where you can quickly turn to face the side of your ship towards theirs, positioning your broadside cannons for basically a point-blank blast. For this, it's actually best to blind fire them without aiming at all for maximum damage. At this point, your ships should be passing each other in opposite directions. So the last move is to quickly swing your camera around to face backwards to access your rear weapons and fire off some barrels. If you do it quick enough while the enemy ship is still close, you should be able to drop a barrel straight on them for another chunk of damage. After that whole sequence, the battle is probably going to get more messy. So your next move is probably just to swing around and try to hit them with a normal aim shot with your broadside cannons. Remember that lowering your sails will let you turn faster, which can be really helpful for swinging around to position as needed. We also mentioned ramming, but there are actually two different ways to ram. The first is just putting up all the sails and going as fast as you can straight into another ship. But once you get Padre on board as your master at arms, you'll unlock the ram dash ability, which is way more effective. This is basically ramming on steroids and at a much faster speed, and the ability has to be charged up by landing shots with other weapons first. Then you trigger it by hitting L1 and R1. If you have the ram dash charged up at the start of a battle, then you can go for another much simpler opening tactic. Basically just ram dash into a ship and then immediately fire your front cannons to blast them at point blank. But you can also use the ram dash at any point during a battle to avoid getting rammed yourself. If an enemy ship is coming to ram you and you don't think you're going to be able to get out of the way in time with normal maneuvers, then you can hit the ram dash for a quick burst of speed to get out of the way. Also, definitely worth keeping in mind that you can stop an enemy ship in the middle of their ramming attempt if you can manage to get them to hit an explosive barrel. It can definitely be tricky, but if you're able to lob one out the back quick enough, it's a very effective way to protect yourself. The most effective way to protect yourself, though, is bracing, which you definitely shouldn't ignore. Holding square throughout the duration of an enemy attack, whether it's getting rammed or hit with cannon fire, will dramatically reduce the damage you take. And bracing becomes even more effective once you unlock Perfect Brace, which works just like a perfect parry or perfect dodge. If you brace just before impact, the damage reduction is even better. Definitely a good reason to prioritize getting to the Manor hideout on Great Inagua through main quest progression quickly. In addition to a bunch of other important stuff that unlocks at that point, getting to Great Inagua unlocks officer quests so you can go find Lucy and convince her to become your shipwright, which unlocks Perfect Brace, and Padre to become your master at arms, which unlocks the ram dash. But let's get back on land for a minute and talk about gear. If you're not there yet, the hideout on Great Inagua Island gets unlocked fairly early through main quest progression, and the game really opens up at this point with a bunch more systems and mechanics becoming available, including opportunities to get some great gear early on. The first is Bernard the Butler. He's going to want you to bring back a bunch of art pieces to the manor, and it's actually easier to get those than you'd think. There's a handful you can just purchase from any general store merchant, and you'll also pick up a bunch just from exploring and doing quests. Sending ships on missions and raiding warehouses can also get you more art pieces. Once you get enough art pieces, Bernard will give you a set of legendary pistol swords that will fire 3 free pistol shots for their heavy attack, which is great for knocking down enemy guard bars. I had 24 art pieces by the time I first talked with him, so I don't know exactly how many you actually need to get the swords, but I think it's either 15 or 20. If you happen to have the deluxe edition, then you'll definitely want to use the light server's blades from the start. But either way, you can get some other great swords even earlier than Bernard's by simply purchasing them from a general store merchant. You just need to upgrade your general store at the hideout so more gear and other items become available. For your first purchase, I'd recommend either the pirate scimitars, standard pistol swords, or the officer's rapiers. The pirate scimitars will let you chain 3 takedowns, have a 38 damage stat, which is quite high especially for a blue weapon, and will do a regular heavy attack. An even cheaper version of this would be the British colonial cutlasses, if you want something earlier. The standard pistol swords give you that free pistol shot heavy attack and also have 3 takedowns. And if you like parrying, you'll want the officer's rapiers, because it's the earliest weapon I could find that will let you chain 4 takedowns. They also have a longer thrust heavy attack. By the way, even if you typically don't like to parry, give it a try. The parry window is pretty forgiving, and there's a lot of benefits to the parry system. If you want to go legendary, but you haven't found enough art pieces to get those swords from Bernard yet, or if you just don't like the pistol shot heavy attack, then you're definitely going to want to unlock the treasure dealer at the hideout to get access to the matched golden swords. These let you do 4 takedowns as well, but more importantly, they have a perk that extends the range for takedowns, making them much easier to chain. The matched golden swords don't cost any reals, but you will need to trade some sugar and a lot of skins. And this highlights how important animal skins are. You definitely want to be hunting animals anytime you see them because you're going to need a lot of skins and bones for a bunch of purchases and upgrades. Pistols are really helpful for hunting the fast ones that run from you, but you can also buy a lot of the deer and crocodile skins you need for the matched golden swords from a general store merchant. You'll need to trade him a bunch of bones for those. If you'd rather just cough up reals, you can buy the Order of Gold or Blades of Toledo from a regular general store merchant instead. I think your gold is better spent elsewhere early on, but those are definitely solid options too. I don't really recommend you buy any of the early pistols from merchants though. Instead, you can grab Captain Wheelock's from the chest in the water directly below the viewpoint at the hideout right outside the manor. Or you can pick up Captain Morgan's even earlier from the underwater chest in the northeast bay of Black Island. Both of those have a 50% draw speed upgrade over the base pistols. If you've got the deluxe edition, then definitely keep using the Dark Workers pistols for a while. They have better stats and a perk that saves ammo while anonymous. Now, swords and guns are cool of course, but some of the better trinkets honestly make a bigger difference in the long run. I'd highly recommend heading to Cat Island early to loot the Narwhal's Horn trinket. This one lets you break enemy defenses faster, which is very helpful so you can get takedowns more easily. You'll find the Narwhal's Horn on a table up on the second floor of the big yellow house at the back of Cat Island. One that I like even better though is the Lock of Hair, which restores some health every time you perfect parry. This one's kind of tricky because I got it from an anomaly. For me, it was the anomaly that said to board a corrupted ship, and it was right next to the Great Inagua hideout island, but it may appear somewhere else for you. A bit later, you can get the Templar Cross, which reduces damage from all enemy melee attacks. It comes with the Templar outfit locked in the cage inside the manor at the hideout, and you're gonna need keys to open it. Those keys come from a series of Templar Hunts side quests, which you can definitely do relatively early. The only one that might give you trouble is the one in the Castillo de Agua region with Opia. You have to sail into a bay with some powerful enemy ships for that one, but you can actually get past them safely by just anchoring outside the bay and then swimming in. As you progress and upgrade the general store, you'll also see that the Lodestone and Shark Teeth trinkets become available for sale. The Lodestone is definitely nice because it will auto loot things nearby for you, and the Shark Teeth make it so large brute enemies can't deny your chain takedowns. There's a bunch more gear to get into though, and a lot more tips and tricks that I honestly just didn't have time to cram into this video, so definitely check out my next video right here on screen. I'll link it as soon as it's ready. If you're looking to dive into Black Flag Resynced, you can buy it at the different platform links below. And subscribe to make sure you don't miss a bunch more Black Flag tips and tricks coming soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in that next video in just a second.